Hi,
Hey,
how are you today?
I am doing very well. How are
Oh,
you?
good. Good. It's nice in California today.
It is chilly on the East Coast. I am a little bit of, I would say, envious, not jealous, because you get great weather all year round, but you do have earthquakes. So I'll give you that.
Yeah, we do. We had an earthquake sometime this year. Actually, there's earthquakes all the time. We just don't really maybe feel them as much. So, hi, I am Helen, and I help with the I Took a Hike podcast social media, whether it's the stuff that you see on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. We just kind of all collaborate on making content and helping Darren just post it because he is a busy man and does not have the time.
Even if I do have time, it's delegating, right? You're better at your job than I am, and I appreciate that because you do a great job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this episode is going to be a little bit different where we would love to get to know you. You're the host of I Took a Hike podcast. And I think this would be a great opportunity for us to one, get a bonus episode. Season two is wrapping up and or has wrapped up actually today. Today is December 5th. So if you haven't listened to the last episode, go ahead and check it out. Available on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And so, yeah, I would love to get to know you, to let the audience know who you are, where you have been, how you got here, all that stuff. But I guess to start, I would love to know what's going through your head right now as we approach into season three.
So what's really going through my head is the holiday mad dash. As you can imagine, being a father of three daughters is very trying at times. So dealing with that and all of the things that we need to check off for the end of the year, that's of my biggest buzz going around. But for season three, I am right now debating what's the best date to launch it. Right. As with any show or podcast or endeavor, picking your dates and your timeline is so critical. And the obvious answer is we'll wait to the new year and start it. But the pressure that's on a hiking podcast host is, we have to have enough episodes to cover a season, which is 12 episodes. And it's really cold on the Northeast. So I will be doing a little bit of travel. I do have plans to go to North Carolina for two really big guests that I am definitely fanboying out on, and I can't wait to meet them. And I might make a trip out to California. I don't know. I might also do a snowshoeing episode if it does, in fact, snow where I am in the tri state area. So that's going on in my head. There's a lot spinning right there.
Can you release or share who those two guests are in North Carolina
I
or
could
not yet?
definitely share one. The other one
Okay.
almost confirmed, but one is, I would say he's a goat to me, greatest of all time. His name is Dan Ariely. He's a behavioral scientist and a professor at Duke University. We have it scheduled right now for May timeframe to hike in Asheville, North Carolina. He's been the author to dozens of books. He's been on dozens of TED Talks. He is just a very charismatic, likable behavioral scientist that I think many people would recognize right away. If you saw him, Google him, you might know him, but he's great. And I can't wait to hike with him.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so there's a lot going on as we're approaching season three. I'm sure as you know, you are the main host and kind of the brain behind the podcast. A lot of decisions do have to come from you, and it's like, is this the right one? Is that the not the right one? You know, so I understand. And then we would love to get to know you. You mentioned having three daughters. You
Yep.
know, I'm sure being a father, everyone says having a child or for you, children, you know, is a life-changing experience. How do you think you have changed since becoming a father?
That's a loaded question. Wow. I I finally figured out what real love is, right? Not the puppy love, the infatuation of a girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, significant other, right? Just truly understanding and appreciating love for this this living, breathing creature that you had made, and you don't realize it's love until they really piss you off, and you have that moment where you're like, I still want to be around you.
Oh,
I think a
yeah.
lot of parents can relate to that. But no, that's helped change me. My empathy meter has gone way up, and as a person, which we've all heard me throughout the episodes and seasons, I have ADHD, and one of the symptoms of ADHD is lower empathy. And for the longest time, I didn't have it. Right? You can tell me all about your vacation, and in my head, I'm like, okay, fast forward, right? Or you can ask how my vacation was, and I would just turn to you and say it was great. Right? It's not because I don't care, but it's because my brain just didn't see that as an effective use of my time. Right? Now
So
having
even that,
children, I'm more empathetic and I'm willing to talk to you about vacations or time, or maybe it's just a function of getting older.
I see. So that's so interesting. So the empathy isn't just for other people, it's even for your own like time of conversing about your vacation. You're like, there's no need for me to really tell you how my vacation went. So let's just say
Yeah.
it's great and move on.
Yeah, it was
That's
great. I went on a vacation. It was awesome. What did you think it was? Right? Or if it's
right.
a family with
Okay.
vacation, anyone who's listening who has kids, a family with or a vacation with family is not a vacation. Half the time you're yelling at your kids, or somebody's breaking something in the hotel, or something chaotic is going on. I
Hmm.
think it takes a while to really get used to the fact that you're taking your kids just to a different place and they're driving you nuts.
Yeah. So just one more question about your daughters then. So you have three daughters. Would love to know at least their ages, and out of them, who is the most helpful despite age or, you know, first or second or third born?
All right, so I have twins, two of them. They are 9 years old. They are nothing alike, and they happen to have been born within a minute of each other. They don't look alike. They don't act alike. Their personalities are super different. One is a cheerleader, very into being at the top of her pyramid. She's a flyer, for those in the know. She goes to 5 days a week of practice, really committed at 9 years old. The other one is into baseball and basketball and art and Roblox and everything opposite of cheerleading, which is phenomenal for me. So I have two separate kids, which is great. And then the baby is 5. I will always call her baby, despite the fact that she yells at me and says, I'm not a baby. But I would say, as far as helpfulness goes, kids aren't the same that they were back in my day. And I'm sure every parent says that, but I have to practically beg them to do the dishwasher, a chore that I absolutely loathe because that was my chore. And I'm making sure that my payback is to uh, bequeath that to my children. But no, helpfulness is really, that's a big challenge, right? To get them to volunteer to help. But I think now as they get older, they are picking up some of the chore slack, which I want them to. I want them to be independent. I want them to know how to do things for themselves. So that's one of the best lessons I can teach them is work, put in the work, put in the effort.
Yeah. Okay. So switching over to hiking, have you always been a hiker before the podcast?
No.
Oh, okay.
I have been a very active person. I wrestled in junior high school. I did not play team sports. I was never a team sport player. I'm very competitive. And because of that, team sports didn't work for me. It was a not fair situation in my mind or anyone else's. I would be the ball hog. Um, no, hiking came after a very long bout with depression, COVID. Everyone went through it. Having just sold a company and not feeling like I needed to work anymore. All of that came crashing down around the same time, exacerbated by COVID. And it was just feeling completely irrelevant. And as I've explained on the episodes and the show before, my brother took me out for a hike. He thought it was time for me to get out into nature. And we did Breakneck Ridge. Happened to be going there next week on a hike with a guest. But we did Breakneck Ridge, and it was really challenging. It was like an uphill mountain climb, and it was as close to mountain climbing as possible. And the name is very apropos. From there, I loved it. And I thought, you know what? This was great. I got to use my 5 senses, breathe in nature, so to speak. And I just enjoyed the isolation and the view. So I decided to
Mm.
say yes to another friend, Ben Skulski, who happened to be episode 2, and I took a hike. I have a thing with twos, I guess. But yeah, so he took me out and we did Stairway to Heaven. And that's part of the Appalachian Trail. And it's huge. It's a monster, 1,300 feet in elevation, very steep stairs, nature stairs, rock formation where you climb up to the top. And during the conversation, I said to Ben, who happened to have sold a company recently as well, I said, Ben, how are you dealing with this? Like, I feel irrelevant. I feel kind of useless, peaked too early. And Ben turned to me, stopped in his tracks, and he said, Darren, man, you're not irrelevant. Why are you tying work to relevancy? He said, you're a good
Mm,
father and family man. Ran a great business. You did great things for a lot of people in your industry. That's relevant. So stop tying work to it. And with that, the aha moment just sparked. Finished our hike,
mhm.
enjoyed the view at the top of the Stairway to Heaven. I got back to my Jeep and it instantly, that cliched spark of entrepreneurism, I took a hike. I took a hike with Ben Skulski. I took a hike. This is great. And then I quickly went to GoDaddy and I saw I took a hike.com was available and that was it. No looking back. So
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's always great to hear how every business has come about, and sometimes there's always a silver lining for everything, right? And you were in a dark space and your brother helped you, and then you went on a hike with Ben Skulski, and that transpired into this amazing podcast where you're helping other people that are either entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs, or business owners, right? And you're actually helping these people. So love that. And so then I know you've been on a lot of hikes,
yes.
whether it was before the podcast, even though it wasn't much long lived. Which is the most memorable hike that you've ever had thus far? It doesn't have to be for the podcast.
Yeah, so I will say the most memorable is Breakneck Ridge with my brother because that was, breaking out of my shell essentially. Then obviously, the Ben Skulski one that started it all, which gave me that purpose and the relevancy again, right? And as you can imagine, podcasting is a horrible revenue stream unless you are of the elite and you know who those are, the top 10. This is a great marketing tool. It's a great resource, but you can't expect to make a lot of money from it. In fact, it'll cost you money. But that's where the search of the podcast of finding what success is and not tying it to wealth really comes about. That's the sense of purpose, wealth, success, wealth, not exclusively mutual, right? So I would say with that, I've had some really fun adventures with our guests like Evan Marks. We did Pyramid Mountain, Tripod Rock for the first time I ever saw it. It's this huge glacial deposit, this huge boulder, the size of probably a quarter size of a house, literally hovering in air, sitting on top of three stones this big, triangular stones. You can crawl under. It's just amazing that these tripod stones and this one huge boulder just landed so perfectly, right? I redid
Mm-hmm.
that same hike several times with our guests. Melanie Borden did it again, and she could swear that that stone was placed there by aliens. Now, granted, this is right before she almost stepped on a copperhead snake and was wiped off the planet, which is kind of scary now that I think back of it. But we've done that a few times. Season 3, I have an episode on it as well. That was really memorable seeing that for the first time.
Mm.
Plus, the energy from Evan was pretty good. Hiking with the mayor of my town, who happened to be the person who brought HBO Go to HBO. She was is a very empowering female person who is an idol and a role model for my children and many others. She was the first female in the C-suite in HBO, and she tells the story on how she wasn't really welcomed. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the early 2000s, right? So that was a really shocking moment for me to be a part of. And then obviously full circle event with today's season finale. Dr. David Munson, the president of my alma mater, Rochester Institute of Technology. That's a full circle event. And for me, it was a little bit intimidating. And you wouldn't think I've had this successful career. I've been the CEO. I've spoken on stage in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people. But hiking alongside such a high level educator it almost brought me back to being my 20-year-old self. And I felt like I was in front of a teacher and I needed to impress that teacher. And there are moments when I'm listening back to it where I'm like, that wasn't the best version of me right there. I could have asked a better question. And I hear in my voice the little bit of intimidation and the holdback that I have. So I'm not immune to being human like anyone else. And I have my flaws and I have my fears and my doubts and my vulnerabilities and embarrassments. And that was a moment of humility for me to listen to this episode.
Hmm.
But it's memorable.
Yeah, that's, yeah, I mean, I feel like, when we see someone that, like for you, it's your alma mater, right? It's where you went. And to see someone and you're like, I'm literally hiking next to this
Oh,
person. I can actually empathize with you, like to feel like I need to impress him. It's like, oh, look, dad, like look what I can do now. Like
yeah.
it's kind of like that.
I felt so
So
lucky to be hiking next to him. And besides the fact he's 6'5", he's
oh,
68 years old, I believe, or it is in his 60s. So I was worried there as well, especially after he told me he used to hike all the time. And unfortunately, he has no cartilage on his knees. So
oh my
mid
goodness.
hike, I'm like, oh, shoot, is this going to be an issue? But no, he
Yeah.
did. He did phenomenally well. The episode came out great. And, it was definitely memorable.
Yeah, yeah. So I would love to get to know you with Mass Communications, the company that you sold. It's a telecommunications company. So, I would love to know, and we would love to know, did you start Mass Communications with just you in the beginning? Like, I imagine it's you behind a laptop or a computer in your own home, apartment, coffee shop, just working and doing all the things, like trying to wear all the hats to grow this business. So was it just you that started?
It was me for about 13 minutes. It was
Okay.
December 19th, 2007 at 2:19 a.m. I woke up. It is as cliche as it gets, right? Same thing when I had the took a hike epiphany. I woke up out of a dream and the words out of my mouth were mass communications, more than just talk. That's a great name for a telecom company. And it's my last name. Cool. Go. Been talking about this for years. So I sent an immediate email off to who became my first partner, David Schwed. He was my oldest and longest standing friend and probably the smartest guy I ever met. I've told him this enough times to where, his head blew up, right? But he is very brilliant guy. And he was in the IT services world. And I needed that help for a telecom company. I needed that. I needed a trusted partner. Um, Sent my email, wrote my very quick business plan. As you are aware, I don't believe in writing a long, drawn out business plan unless you're going out for investments. Caveat. But I wrote that quick, here's what we want to do. The exit strategy was at the top. I willed it, what I wanted. And then we met in the conference room in my apartment building. I was living in Manhattan at the time. Next day, I went in. I told my boss I was going to quit. You saw the LinkedIn story about that. My boss, he said, no uncertain terms, it's about fucking time, kid. Sorry, parents, for the language. But I was paraphrasing his words. I had all the faith from them to do this. Gave them my 3-month notice because I just didn't want to leave without filling in all the gaps. And they were so generous to allow me that, to have the 3 months, which was a soft padded landing. And then on March 8th, 2008, I officially started my first day in the office as the CEO of Mass Communications, Masscom for others that shortened it. We had a third partner. Our third partner was someone I trusted in the industry. He already had a business. His name was Mark Gold. And we just worked very well. Mark was your traditional ops minded, sales individual minded business owner who, because he had so much business experience, checked off the boxes for me. I didn't have to learn how to do certain things in running and managing an office or personnel. I didn't have to worry about, what do we do for accounting and things like that. So he gave me shortcuts. And I learned a lot from watching him, observing him, and being partners with him. And same thing with Dave. Dave, he stayed full time with the company he was at, so we didn't have to pay a salary. But I had a full time partner. For some reason, he was able to give us the 40 hours we needed a week. So it all worked
Wow.
out. But to go back to your question, yeah, I was the chief cook and bottle washer, right? If there was a sales call, I went out on it. When we finally got our first order, like 2 or 3 months later, I made the sale. All right. I had to engineer the deal. I had to order the deal. I was sleeping with a phone under my pillow because I was Sam Nerad, the 24-hour knock technician or network operations center help desk technician. Why Sam Nerad? Well, many years later, one of our first clients asked me whatever happened to Sam because they loved his service at 2 a.m. And I said, Darren Mass backwards, Sam Nerad. Aha moment. But it's an important lesson. And sometimes you do have to fake it until you make it. But to
Yeah.
be a business owner and to bridge the gap from entrepreneur to entrepreneur, you have to be willing to do everything it takes
Yeah.
relentlessly. And that means sleeping with that phone under your pillow or being everything to everyone at a moment's notice.
Yeah. So now that I know that you had two additional partners, I think it's awesome. Oftentimes you'll find businesses where you have two people that kind of have the same brain or think the same way, but it sounds like you had partners that were very complementary to one another. So everyone filled that 100% pie very equally, but in different categories.
Yeah.
Was there ever like a moment where, like, let's say, someone else was in charge of accounting, but you had a better idea and, vice versa?
Yeah, countless times. Opposites attract in this case, right? Where I was very strong. We used to call it the rings of glory, and I drew out these three intersecting rings in a row, right? And it was engineering, sales, and operations. First and foremost, we were an engineering company. That's what we carved our niche on, which was very unique in the industry. We were all about the solution, right? That customer service aspect, especially in the ugly world of telecom, right? Think about it. When's the last time you called your wireless carrier? How fun was that experience, right? So we made it fun and exciting and easy. So I focused on engineering. Engineering, though, did have some customer service aspect and some operations aspect. So there were times where we would kind of meet in those gray zones in the middles where we overlapped. But I never allowed ego to get in front of my decisions, especially as a young CEO. So what do I mean by that? If either of my partners disagreed with anything that I had so strongly that I saw that it was bothering them on a decision I made, I would question it, I would listen to it, and I'd probably change my thinking because I trusted the fact that my partners had our collective best interests in mind. And it wasn't malicious and it wasn't nefarious and there was no ego involved. And the same thing, if I wholeheartedly disagreed with an approach in either of the other rings, then they would listen to me. And, sure, we had a few moments where we just didn't agree, but that's where, having a consultant and a referee in your corner or on your side or refereeing really does help a business grow. And we had some great consultants that would say, okay, you guys aren't agreeing. Let's figure this out and come up with a solution. And then we
Yeah.
implemented lots of process. And then, as the business went on, it just became, in a way, easier with the scale because the process was defined. And we learned what the
Hmm.
true meaning of staying on brand was. And is this
Okay.
good for the brand? Is this good for the customer? Is this on value or for our core values? And if any
Yeah.
of those answers was no, then you had your black and white definitive answer.
So going from, in a way, even though you didn't wear all the hats, you kind of did because, again, growing a business, scaling a business is always a lot of work, right? Even though you were in charge of engineering, um, like when you started to scale your business and like what new tools did you have to develop from, when you went from you three to like having, 10, 20, 30 employees?
Yeah. So with all growth, you need to implement systems and you need to pay big bucks for those systems. One of those systems was Salesforce. It's like the holy grail of CRM systems. Um, Realistically, today, the one you pick, as long as you use it, it works for you, great. But this was an enterprise level system and it cost an arm and a leg in time and physical dollars to utilize. And, that's something that in time makes your life easier, especially as you grow, because it scales with you. But it is a big, huge investment that, you should not take on unless you're ready. But with that
Mm,
being said, every business, whether it's a startup or a midlife, right, or even at the end of the business, should have well-designed systems that work for them. And I don't care if it's a simple Excel spreadsheet setup, as long as there's a process in place and you follow that process and you don't deviate, then that's your system. But efficiency needs to be worked into your systems as you scale.
okay. So as you grew and scaled, you just had more systems in place to help the process of everything. And that way, everyone just also kind of knows what their role is, what they're doing, and everyone can see what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Well, outside
okay.
of this, I'm a business therapist because what I've realized is business owners, especially small business owners and partnerships, they need therapy, right? There's a lot of blame game, a lot of lack of trust for their partner if it's not working out or infighting. Blame the employees for screwing up, right? When really the issue starts and stops with the business owner. So I help them get out from under the rock and we solve emotional challenges, personnel, people, process, and product issues, like Marcus Lemonis would say. But what I've realized, though, is that business owners that don't have process and they don't have systems and they're not constantly willing to change and grow, they run into growing pains and start falling backwards. And that's where having
Mm-hmm.
strategy and having people you can align with, or consultants or coaches or whatever you want to call them, that's where that really comes into play and helps you grow your business. That's where I spend most of my time now when I'm not hiking.
Okay. So how do you think you have changed since selling your business?
Oh boy. I've changed a lot. I'm human. Immediately, the woe is me, right? I hit many emotional roller coaster moments. There was an emotional high immediately after I checked my bank account. And then the rest of that day was just a normal day. And I remember thinking, this just doesn't feel any different. I'm still the same person, but now I can afford stuff. But I still went back to my desk and my job and I had a meeting like like nothing was different. And I enjoyed it. So I went through this immediate high and then this crash of just like, oh, this is normal. Uh, and then I went back to work. I took an employment agreement from the company that acquired us, and I ended up running a very large division, the resale and retail enterprise divisions, which was our company that was acquired. So I still had my hands on the baby, as well as many other aspects of growing a large business unit with all of my competition. So it was a weird twist of fate. I was now the president of the business unit running my company plus all of my competitors' companies. So that was
Ah,
cool. It was cool because I was immediately their friend instead of their foe or enemy in their mind. And my job was to help them grow their book of business within our organization. So I hit the ground running without taking a single second of a break. So to me, this was normal. I was working. I didn't get a chance to celebrate that win. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. But after that, I just started realizing that wasn't fun. It wasn't exciting. And unfortunately, the company had a financial challenge and I took a leave. That next day, I started my business therapy practice and hit the saddle again and started riding again and essentially working, not taking that break that I probably should have taken. And then COVID. So talk about some ups and downs. Now, when you have a big financial event, I think many people think that everything's going to be happiness and peaches and roses and you can afford your Lamborghinis and buy your house. Yeah, sure, that's true. But like most lottery winners, it's a curse too. And I'm not saying this for the woe is me aspect. I get it. I realize how that sounds. No, what I'm trying to say is people are people and you're still human. So you have to find that purpose, that balance, whether or not you invest in your family stock or you invest in free time stock or hobbies or going and starting a new venture or doing anything other than staring at the digital zeros in your bank account, right?
mm-hmm,
What
mm-hmm.
what an exit event can do for you is check off a whole bunch of don'ts. I don't have to worry about a medical expense that I can't afford. I don't have to worry about sending my kids to college. But that's where it stops. The rest, you're still a human and you You live on and you keep moving forward. So that's essentially where my head was at for those few years after the exit.
Mm-hmm. So I know an exit was at the top of your business plan from the very beginning. You thought about mass
It was.
communications.
Yeah.
A lot of people say their business, whether it was small and now it's a Fortune 500, it's still their baby. Like you said, it's your
Yeah.
baby. As soon as you found out that you knew somebody wanted to buy you out or acquire you, what were your thoughts and emotions? Like, were you kind of like, oh my God, this is finally here? Or, ooh, I don't want to let this go? Like, what were your thoughts and feelings?
Well, in our case, our buyer didn't know they wanted to buy us until I brought it to their attention. Um,
Oh,
I have several clients that I provide my services for, and a few of them do want to sell their businesses. And I have to remind them, you know who your buyer is. It's up to you to turn them into your buyer and make them aware. And that's pretty true with a lot of small business acquisitions. In our case, there were a few defining moments where it just clicked in my head. I need to execute on my exit plan that I had written down. And one of them, I saw one of my partners was definitely not enjoying running a business anymore. Right. He was not having great days all the time. He was having frustrations. And that's what happens in a 10-year-old business. The other partner, you could tell he was getting frustrated with some employee issues that were going on. And again, 10-year-old business, that tends to happen. And then there was a defining moment with the client account that just really was a wake up call. And I remember turning to my partners and I said, if I can get us this amount of money for our business, would you be willing to sell? And they both said with a chuckle, yeah, right. If you can get that, we'll sign immediately. So luck would have it. You create your own lucky situations. I reached out to someone who just moved to the company that acquired us. And we've had a great relationship. And I said, hey, so and so, let's go to lunch. And at lunch, I said, how would you like to buy us? And his jaw dropped and he said, I didn't know you were for sale. And that's when I laid out the plan. You
mm,
have this department that's failing and fledgling. That department is the department that I buy from. You acquire us. I'm a friendly. I will help grow that department. And besides the fact, now that I'm telling you that we are for sale, you can't afford to lose my business to one of your competitors. So why don't we discuss selling a business? You have it,
mm-hmm.
right? But you already know your buyer. Just need to make them your buyer.
Yeah. I see. So as soon as I'm sure there was some time in between of that lunch and then the signing, like,
Yeah.
did you, were you like, this is happening, I'm excited?
Yeah.
Were you, there's some bittersweet moments because you're like letting go of your baby?
It's all of the above. Anyone who has sold a business knows what I'm probably about to tell as the tale. It is the single most nerve-wracking moment of your life. Forget having babies and becoming a new father. Forget the new job. It is crippling, nerve-rattling, crippling. I would have to hop on my Peloton in the morning just to get my hands to stop going like this.
Oh,
Because everything that, in our case, and many other cases, everything we worked for 10 years could have been destroyed with the wrong message, with the wrong conversation, with the wrong rumor, or if they pulled out last minute. And in our case, we were a regulated utility. Telecommunications companies, in order to be acquired, need to be approved by the public service commissions of each state that you operate in, by the FCC, and by the public. And there is a 90-day hold period. So what does that mean? We sign our stock purchase agreement. Well, just getting there is nerve-wracking, right? The amount of due diligence, the hundreds of reports and questions that you need to go over and sort through, the corporate cleanup that you need to be able to even get to a purchase point, you're talking about 16-hour days while faking it and not letting on that you're selling the business. Because if rumor gets out, your clients will get scared, your employees will get scared, your competitors will get hungry, right? So you have to be an actor as well as the best worker you've ever had. So that's nerve-wracking, right? You can't have high five moments because you're all frazzled. So you get to the stock purchase agreement, you finally get there. Then does the deal even go through? Right? Because we have to wait 90 days after it's announced. Now it's announced publicly. So all of your employees start saying, we're selling the business. All of your vendors, competitors, everyone starts vulturing. Yeah, for 90 days, at any moment, anyone could veto the deal. That's pretty nerve wracking as well. So it is, I will tell you, there were numerous sleepless nights. It was
Yeah.
pretty bad. Yeah. But we finally got through it.
Yeah. And, as a leader, it sounds like you were really hands-on even even through the end of the business of exiting. I'm sure as a leader, there's times where you see things and you're not happy the way it's going. You're not happy how things are, turning out to be. Um, I would love to know how you manage a situation where you're not exactly satisfied with either, the way it's happening with the person. How do you manage that?
Um, every situation is a challenge and it's difficult. If you're dealing with employee and personnel issues, you do have a process, right? As you have more of these difficult conversations, you get very used to difficult conversations, so to speak. So if you have like an HR related issue, it's pretty pragmatic. By the book, you follow this mental script and you try to do things in the right sequence, in the right order. I like to do confrontation or the compliment sandwich, aka the shit sandwich, right? Helen, you are phenomenal at interviewing. I love your style. It's fantastic. I really think that you should work on perhaps asking some more intriguing questions during the medium point or the midpoint of the conversation. And I know if you do that, you're going to be really great as an interviewer for the future, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
gave
Yeah.
you a corrective action in the middle, but all you heard was "You're great, you're awesome, and here's a tip." It's not offensive the way I did it, right? I mean, that's
Uh-huh.
just a basic example. But then the confrontation approach is always good too. Helen, do I have your permission to give you some criticism?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think I think you really should work on some more complex questions in the mid roll of a conversation. That'll help you out
Hmm.
greatly, and it's coming from a good place. But because
Yeah.
you gave me permission, you
Yeah.
were in the driver's seat. You asked me,
Right.
and now you're no longer offended, right?
I see. I see.
It's advantageous for me in this situation, or an employer, or a business owner, or manager, to get you to be the best version of you. So why would I want to come
Mm,
from a frame of negativity? You're then not
right.
going to
Right.
like me. You're not going to align with me. You're not going to want to work with or for me if that's the way
Yeah.
your organization and your culture is. So why would I want to set you up for failure unless I
Yeah.
truly wanted you to leave?
Yeah.
And that's a
I think
whole
that's
other
really,
host.
yeah, I think that's really helpful, right? Because no matter what, in any relationship, right? Like we're sometimes dissatisfied, unhappy, our expectations are not met with our spouse or our children, whatever it is. It's like how, as a great leader, I think those are great tips that people could take away. So to change things up as we kind of wrap up, I know you live in New York, and one of the best things about
Jersey.
New York is, oh,
I
sorry,
live in Jersey. I
Jersey.
hike in New York quite often, but
Oh, okay. But
Jersey.
you
I
go
know
back and forth.
I know everyone wants to forget about Jersey, but Jersey's awesome. I grew up in New York.
Okay, okay. My apologies. Okay, so you live in Jersey, you grew up in New York. So growing up in New York, obviously one of the best things is food. If you had your last meal, what would your meal be?
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A.
You don't even have to
You,
finish the question. And I should mention, I knew none of the questions you were going to ask, much like the I Took a Hike podcast. These are
yeah,
not scripted, right? The episodes are not
yeah,
scripted. It's a conversation between a successful business achiever and the host, right? It's
uh-huh.
an open dialogue. There's no
Of
scripting here. I
course.
didn't know your
Yeah.
script, but Chick-fil-A. I crave
What do you
Chick-fil-A.
get?
And I know a lot of people are smiling because they agree. I get the spicy chicken deluxe with the large fries and the lemonade, not the sugar-free, the actual lemonade. Forget about sugar-free nonsense. And then I dip it into no less than 4 Chick-fil-A sauces.
Sauces. Oh my gosh. Well, that's
Four.
the
It didn't
sandwich
didn't
I
work on
get.
camera because I think I froze there, but 4 Chick-fil-A sauces because they are amazing. And if I had one
Okay.
last meal, it would be the spicy chicken deluxe.
Okay. Well, that is a sandwich I get as well. So we're on the same page there. Um, and then I would love to know, like, who is the most important person who has affected you the most?
Life or business?
Let's do both.
I would say in business, I've had so many business mentors that didn't realize they were my mentor because I would study them, not in a weird, creepy way, but
Yeah, of course.
I had this I had this assistant manager at a appliance store I worked for. His name was Emilio Rodriguez, and he was sharp, right? At least for back then, my opinion of him as this 14, 15-year-old impressionable kid, he was just sharp. He was a consummate salesperson. He was just slick. And I used to observe his every move. And he knew that he was a mentor to me. We never had the words exchanged, but he would say, "Hey, kid, come over here. Let me teach you about this pricing." Right. So he took the time with me. Um, in a recent post, my boss, Paul Bloom, who told me it was about fucking time, right? He always took me under his wing and he would show me the ropes. He's the one who put the right tools in my hand and gave me the confidence when I screwed up that I knew how to fix a problem. Big people learning from their mistakes, like Steve Jobs, how to just never quit, how to utilize vengeance, for ultimate success. There is a good learning lesson in that. You can even learn from his flaws, how not to be a dick, right? I hate to say it any other way, but when you read his autobiography, he just wasn't a great person at the end of the day. So I learned from that as well. In life, I'd be amiss if I didn't credit my wife for having faith in me from the early onset of our organization. I met her 3 months in. I was broke, eating Hot Pockets every single night. And here comes this, college graduate dating a CEO and thinking it was more than just, this broke joke. So there was that. My in-laws, parents. There's so many people I could look up
Yeah,
to and thank for
I'm sure.
supporting me. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure there's so much more in-depth questions that we could possibly do, but I know you're the interviewer usually, and so hopefully this was fun for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope you have happy holidays. And
I thank you for interviewing me, as the sun is now blinding me over
yeah, I see
in the
that.
window there. This happens. But I thank you for your time and for helping out on the show. You help us with all our social media, and you've been phenomenal at that. So, thank you for hiking along with us.
Yeah, thank you.